Hello there. It is Wednesday, November 26th, Thanksgiving Eve, and it is 9:03 a.m., and I am in traffic on I-65 going north. I have made my escape. I attempted to make a clip yesterday, but boy, what a day it was. It didn't see me going to sleep until 2 a.m., after some I expected it to be logistically difficult, getting off the train, having to bike 2 miles to the U-Haul thing after the shop had closed, then having to pick up this van mobily. I was like, there's like a lot of areas here where I feel like balls could be dropped, my dude, if you know what I'm saying. And I think that you do. But yeah, thankfully everything worked out. So, I don't have a lot to say about yesterday. I guess after making that clip, I kind of did some I have my needfuls, and there are different versions. I'd say there's like a standard version, and then there's like sort of a more intense and in-depth version. So typically if I'm going through something, there's just like a very practical surface level form that takes that isn't extremely intensive, but when I have ample time, I will go through something very, very detailedly. And so I did a lot of digital needfuls and organizing my bags and stuff like that, but like in my phone at least, going through on a very, very fine level detail and just like evaluating things, files. Do I still want to keep these pictures? Do I want to keep these documents? Do I want to keep these audio clips, things like that. That was a big part of my day. And just listening to podcasts pretty much the entire time and drinking coffee. But I went to bed around 10:30 or so, and it was very uncomfortable, but that's kind of what I have learned to expect from Coach Amtrak. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but for sure I would be and have been more comfortable just sleeping on concrete with my setup. And so thankfully I managed to get a few hours of sleep, maybe 6 or 7. I woke up at like 4:30, and I was just like, well, this is like early enough. Like I usually am kind of starting to stir about now, and really there's no reason to try to keep sleeping because it's just so uncomfortable. So I got up, and my friend Greg, shout out to my friend Greg, really enjoyed spending time with him. I really wish that he had been on the train longer because it would have made my day go by faster. But the same French guy who I had been talking to the day before, he was up, and everything was closed. It was 4:30. We were in San Antonio, and I was like, he was lamenting that there was no cafe. And I was like, well, my dude, I actually have everything that I need to make coffee if you want to step outside, because we were in San Antonio for like an hour. And so I was like, I'll make us coffee. And so we did. I stepped out, got my French press, all my stuff, made us a nice little cup, and then we actually walked to the Alamo, which is really cool. It was about a mile away. If I recall, and since the point of remembering is the Alamo, I suppose I'm doing it right. But yeah, we went over to the Alamo and just talked. He was a really cool guy. I really enjoyed his conversations and just his presence. Like he was a very open person, going through his own renaissance. Viva la Renaissance, my dude. And so it was nice to have someone who was like-minded and had a similar outlook on life, but also had his own unique experiences, both with traveling and working, and then also his family dynamic. Very interesting dude. Certainly the highlight of the whole train trip. And came back, got back on the train, and it was just sort of a slog. The train is great. It's an awesome option if you have something like a bike and you don't want to go through the logistical hassle of taking it to an airport or figuring out how to drive somewhere so that you can bike afterwards. I'm in this U-Haul now, and I spent $600 on it, maybe $700 after taxes. And again, this is all just a cost that I have decided is worth eating, because I'm just that's if I'm spending $60 every 2 days or whatever it is. I'm kind of interested in doing the math with my finances, but at the same time, I'm like, well, like, I don't really care. I'm a person who is lucky enough to be frugal enough to not have to have an active budgeting strategy. It's like usually I have enough to get what I want when I need it. And that's because I don't often want or need much beyond what I have. So it's a self-balancing equation, you know. And something that I really am very proud of, I suppose. Maybe grateful for more than proud. I don't feel like it's something that I've done. I feel like it's just my natural disposition. Anyway, so yeah, you know, I would have spent about this much money within a similar period of time if that's the way I'm framing it anyway. It's like, well, this money was already earmarked for for the outgoing mail, my dude. So yeah, the train is great. It is nice to be able to move around, and you know, you could do laps on the train if you wanted to, if you really got stir crazy about just sitting all the time. But the observation car is really cool. I spent most of the day yesterday there. In fact, I didn't go back to my seat once after I woke up. And yeah, man, you know, you just get coffee after coffee. You know, it's not cheap, but it wasn't that big of a deal. And yeah, just talked to Greg all the way to Houston. So from San Antonio to Houston, we're pretty engaged in conversation. And by the time we got to Houston, that was his depart point. And so I actually got out, did a pretty good little needful run. Like, I wanted to do one more final drying of all my gear, because it kind of has remained in a nebulous state of saturation. And so I finally got all that stuff to a good point. I made a lot of coffee. I filled up my normal 22-ounce bottle, which is technically a insulated vessel, and then I also had my French press full of coffee. So I drank a ton more coffee as soon as I got back on the train. Again, was doing digital needfuls and all other manner of needfuls, and then ultimately I don't know, I ate all my food, I listened to all my podcasts. Was there anything else remarkable between... There was like a slight delay when we were outside of, I think, New Iberia, Louisiana, which was like 20 or 30 minutes and was never explained, but who knows, dude. It was interesting to actually get to know some of the people on the train that were, like the woman who was working the cafe. She'd worked for Amtrak for 13 years, and, you know, it was something that Greg and I remarked on, too, because it was just like, man, what is that job like? Like, these people, this train, it's called the Sunset Unlimited, right? So it goes from Los Angeles all the way to New Orleans, and it's it's like 60 hours long, because I think I was looking at that initially when I was still in the LA area. And you know, it's like the crew stays on the whole time. I don't know if they switched out engineers. They probably do, or I don't know how all of it works. But there were several familiar faces the whole time. You know, they have sleeping cars and stuff for the staff, and the woman who was working the cafe, she was the same person the whole time. So, you know, you go down there 5, 6, 10, 12, 15 times like I did to get coffee, and you end up, you know, forming a little bond with these people, with this person in particular. But yeah, interesting. I was just like, last night for my last cup of decaf before the cafe closed at 10, it's like, how'd you end up getting this job? Like, what was your, like, you know, what was your route to get to working on a train and spending, like, because, like, it's interesting to think that, like, you would be, I don't know how it works, because obviously you have to sleep, but it's like, well, you do have to sleep, but it's also like you're still technically at your job, like you're still at the place that you work. So are you still getting paid? Do you get paid like half-time? I didn't ask her all these questions, and I'm sure I could. Did I mention I'm in traffic? I can't remember, but I am in traffic, and we're just now getting to the place where the traffic is finally abating, my dude. And so, let's see. Yeah, it's like a mad dash now for everyone to get over. Yeah, it's funny with traffic because you never know which lane you're ultimately going to need to be in. So in this case, it was a 50-50 chance, and I played my cards wrong, my dude. There's another wreck almost happening. Yeah, gotta love that part too. When people are like paying less attention than usual, and then they have to like swerve into another lane so they don't hit the back of the car that they're behind. But yeah, it's just interesting. The train culture is an interesting culture to be a part of, and it was fun to make some. Was it Edward Norton in Fight Club? Did he say that thing about disposable friends or something like that? I can't remember, but it was that kind of a feeling. What are you doing, dude? Let me over, please, my dude. Yeah, this is the second wreck that I've seen so far on this trip. I tried, like I said, to make a clip last night, but I got about a minute and a half into it at this other traffic slowdown area, and I was just like, dude, I can't do this. Like, I have no focus to talk about my day at this point. Like, I feel fine, but for sure, like, I am not in a place. Oh wow. I am not in a place to do this clip justice, and thankfully there wasn't a lot going on yesterday for me to recount, so this will probably be much better than if I had really forced myself. Oh shit. Oh, okay. I thought I wasn't recording for a second. Usually, so pardon my expletive. I thought for a moment you might never hear it. Yeah, usually when I'm recording, there's a little icon that shows that it's recording, but since my map is on, it is overriding that function. Anyway, yeah, I was just like, I was not out of it, I was just over it. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference between out of it and over it. Drinking some coffee too, man. Coming back to life. So, anyway, yeah, everything went off without a hitch, pretty much, like, aside from that small little delay. We did get into New Orleans about an hour later than we were originally scheduled for because of that delay, which was unfortunate because pretty much the entire time that I had been on the train up to that point, we had been ahead of schedule by about an hour and a half, and then we just lost all of that and we're later. So got to the train station. Departing was pretty easy. Getting my bike was pretty easy. And I was very, very surprised to find that both of my tires were flat. I was like, I have no idea what happened. I obviously, whatever I hit or whatever is going on with this, I must have hit it twice. Because the likelihood of my tires both being so low with air, it's just like very, very not likely. And so I was like, well, my contingency plan for this the whole time was just to pump up the tires as much as I'm willing to do, which was about 200 pumps each, and then just hope that the leak is slow enough to where I can get to the U-Haul before I'm actually riding on the rim, And even still, I was like, well, I'm not going to stop and repump my tires, though, for 2 miles. Like, I'm just going to end up riding on the rim if I have to, and that'll be fine. I've done that before. It's not preferred, and that means that I need to be extra careful of how I'm riding and the line that I'm taking, because if I hit anything, the consequences are a lot higher. But, the pressure seemed to hold, and even today when I woke up, I checked the tires, and they seemed like they were still holding air. So I was like, what is going on here? What's really going on? Like, I'm not sure. My mind says maybe there was some kind of a weird atmospheric event that I was a part of when I was in Maricopa that caused the tires to lose pressure for some reason. And the tubes maybe are not actually compromised in any way, but I was like, what are the chances of that, though? Like, that's never happened in a documented way for me, let alone to both tires, but it's the only thing that I can really think of, unless once I finally get back, I'll do a post-mortem, and check the tubes and the tires and everything. But yeah, maybe I just went through something twice. Who knows? In a straight line, you really never can tell. I did recently learn something, speaking about straight line, like velocity. So I've had a bit of a sticking point recently when I think about starlight, because I'm like, okay, like entropy is a thing, and like how is it that light can travel such a far distance, even in a vacuum, without losing the energy to continue traveling. And I've asked ChatGPT about that a couple of times, and I've not been satisfied with the answer because I'm just like, that's a little bit too convenient. Like, the answer has basically been, because space is a vacuum, there's no interference between the star emitting the light and it eventually hitting our eyes, light years later. And I was like, well, there is interference, over that amount of distance, for sure. There's like gas clouds and space dust and planets and other stars. Because I kept thinking about substations. I was like, when you send electricity, which is basically light, through wires, you have to put them into a substation before you distribute it to like houses and things like that. And I know that there's like friction in the lines and stuff like that. It's a pretty different situation and a pretty different system. But even still, I was just like, well, over that amount of time and distance, how does a particle not lose any energy? And so today, ChatGPT, I formed the question differently, asking specifically about wavelengths of light. And it was like, it said, basically the rest mass of a photon is neutral, and it doesn't gain or lose any energy, which I'm still like, I don't know, that seems a little too convenient. I mean, there was like, I think it was Planck's constant and Einstein's theory of relativity that they were drawing on to explain how that works. So I guess mathematically, it probably would be pretty easy to plug some basic numbers into an equation and see how that works, at least in terms of the number. I mean, the equations have been built around the theory, so it doesn't necessarily explain it, but at least I know if I am still curious, if this scientific thing is still stuck in my craw, I can actually do some math to at least look at what the next step of this kind of a question would entail in terms of the language that is used to describe these kinds of things. So anyway, I feel a little bit resolved about that. Thankfully. A little sip of coffee. All right. So what else? So I got to the U-Haul, and that was a very, very frustrating experience, I have to say. It's pretty much all on me, because I could have preemptively tried to, like, basically check in ahead of time, but I didn't really know what it was going to entail, and I didn't really look. I didn't even know to look to see if, like, I should maybe try to check in ahead of time. Like when I was on the train for hours doing nothing. And so when I got there, I had to submit my license. I had to, the most confusing part was that I had to submit like points of contact, and I assume it was for confirmation that I was who I said I was, but that seems so fraught with the possibility of gaming and abusing, because like, at MailChimp, we had a system of verification that we used as well to make sure that we were talking to the person who they said they were. And that used just documentation, like you had to upload a passport or upload a license if you were in the United States. And that was sort of the gold standard. And for me, I was like, well, like, what's to keep someone, if I'm trying to do something, nefarious, and the only thing you're asking for, they did ask for other forms. They said you could submit a passport, which I didn't have, a current lease, which I don't have, and then I think the third one was some sort of a military thing, I don't remember. But I was like, well, I don't have any of those documents, so the only choice I had was to provide 2 contacts for confirmation. And I was just like, well, that wouldn't be hard for me to just ask. I could also just have 2 different phones, which I do actually, now that I think about it. I mean, one of them doesn't work in terms of receiving phone calls, but certainly could figure out a situation if I wanted to, for some reason, subvert whatever kind of like verification they were trying to do. Anyway, frustrating, a lot of cussing just to myself, and just being like, man, this is so, like, I was at a point I was like, I'm not sure that I'll be able to like successfully complete this verification process. So as I was waiting for them to send me either a pass or a fail, I did kind of pace around a little bit, and I was like, well, where am I going to sleep if I have to stay here? And so I was to that level, because it was also 11:30. And then, because I had to pack my bike up and pump my tires when I got to the station, so I didn't probably leave there for another 30 minutes until after the train arrived. So, yeah, thankfully, shout out to my family friend from Laguna Beach, who I assume was contacted and thereafter verified my identity. I was able to be approved, and then I was like, well, I've already planned out the next step of what I'm doing. So I loaded my bike up after finishing the checkout process. I had to take pictures of everything and confirm that everything was the way that they said it was before this trip. And then I got onto the road, and I was headed for a rest stop that was 100 miles away in Mississippi. And I had originally thought that I would stop at like a Wendy's or maybe a cafe if it was still open, but those plans kind of got thrown out the window because it was so late. But yeah, I drove for 100 miles to this rest area. I had already planned what I wanted to do when I got there, which was like, I think I already described it, but I did exactly what I had envisioned, which was just to sleep in the back, which was very, very cozy. I PTFO'd, my dude, and woke up at 7, which was a little later than I wanted to. I woke up when my alarm went off at 6, but it was still dark. So I think I've realized if I'm gonna, which this doesn't matter anymore, but in the real world, if I set my alarm before the sun rises, there's a very small chance that will be effective, because I'm like, well, it's not even light yet. Like, what am I going to do if I get up? I'm going to need my headlamp. I'm going to need all this stuff. I'd rather just wait till it's daylight so that things can be easier. So I did fall back asleep until 7, got up with a bit of a start, and pretty much just immediately hit the road. Now I have gone through, I'm out of Louisiana, I'm out of Mississippi, and I'm currently in Alabama on I-65 North, as I think I mentioned, which I will take to Montgomery, and then I'll jump on to 85 North, and then I'm basically just home free after that. I really don't even need directions at this point, because 85 will take me all the rest of the way, which I'll tell you, man, once I get to that stretch of 441, I'm going to be just smooth sailing. So for some reason this morning I was stricken with the idea that I kind of like the idea of just doing like a liquid fast today, just coffee with, protein milk and stuff like that, and water, and then just having a huge meal of eggs and turkey sausage when I get to my parents' house. So that is my tentative plan. I'm going to surprise them, which I hope the surprise still lands. I wasn't really thinking last night when it was asking me for points of contact that they would actually be actively trying to contact those people. And so I put my parents' information, and then I think it tried to call both of them, but it was like already 12:30 a.m. On the East Coast. So their phones didn't let those calls go through. And hopefully they didn't review any missed calls from overnight, and then also be like, hey, I got a phone call from a U-Haul place in New Orleans. That's weird. And my dad would be like, oh, I got a call from them too. They could definitely put the pieces of the puzzle together pretty quickly after that. But I haven't gotten any texts or anything from them today, so I'm assuming that the cat is still in the bag, my dude. And I'm going to pick up some wine for my dad, get some flowers for my mom, and then I'm going to show up prodigal son style, my dude. I have vinied, I have vidied, and I have vicied. And for now, that's about all I got to say. I'm listening to a Huberman episode, which is pretty good, about longevity. So I'll leave it there for now. Love you. Bye.